Have you ever noticed how there are so many games that let you go fishing? It can literally creep into any genre, from adventure games to first-person shooters and everything in between. There are so many, in fact, this whole video is dedicated to it, and we're still barely scratching the surface. So I thought, why not take a look at some of these games and find out what makes fishing such a fun addition. Now, we aren't looking at games that are literally just fishing games, more so games that let you do a whole host of things, and fishing just happens to be part of that fun. With that said, let's take a look at maybe one of the most notorious games to include fishing, Animal Crossing. Since its first incarnation on the GameCube, or N64 in Japan, Animal Crossing hasn't changed all that much. This is especially true of its fishing, which I think speaks volumes on how good it is. The lack of change is actually the reason why we're looking at Animal Crossing series as a whole, rather than just one game. Now that's not to say that nothing has changed in each game. They do add more and more fish to catch in later games, but the core gameplay has always remained the same. So, how does it work? Once you've brought your fishing rod, you're good to go. Just cast out your line in front of a shadow and wait for it to see your line. The fish normally gives a couple of taps, but after that it pulls down and you just pull against it. You are going to see a lot of games that emulate this, and even though it's not the most elaborate, there's something so relaxing about this kind of fishing. Maybe it's the way the game dulls the audio when you fish so you can really hear the water, or maybe it's because the game lets the fish come to you. Now there is an element of skill still involved in this. For example, you have to be out in the right spot or the fish won't go over your hook, and you have to pull at just the right time. Too early or too late and you're gonna lose it. There are tons of different areas you can fish from as well. There's a river, the ocean, little ponds located around the town, and also there's a lake. Now where you cast your line out is going to affect what type of fish you can catch, but it's also dependent on the time and date. As Animal Crossing works on a real-time clock and calendar, certain fish will only come out at the right time of day and season. It basically means you may have to play this for at least a year before you've caught it all. Unless you're a time traveller. Once you catch your fish, you can either sell them for bells or donate them to your museum. I'm not really sure why they've built a museum, as when you first get to town there's nothing inside it. Why they have a museum with nothing to put inside it is a completely different topic. There's also a compendium that will keep track of the fish you catch, and the more species you catch, the game will reward you with things like this nice golden fishing rod, which makes it so much easier. Now if you are really into the Animal Crossing fishing life, you'll be happy to know that a few times a year the town will host a fishing tournament. The rules will vary each time, either having you catch the biggest fish of a certain kind, or just the biggest fish in general. Winning this will also net you a nice trophy, and you get to watch Chip the Beaver eat your catch right in front of you. Ah, come on man, that's just rude. If you've ever played Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, you would know that, yep, you can fish, which you probably could have guessed based on the fact it's in this video. So yeah, if you want to take a break from the honest farm work, then you can by going fishing. As long as you have a fishing rod, you can fish anywhere except for the ocean for some reason. Not really sure what this beach really does. Where you fish will also have an effect on what you can catch, and you can also catch a big version of each fish. These fish can then be used for cooking or sold for profit, with big variants worth double. You can also give them to characters as a present if they're the kind who like fish. Honestly, fishing is actually really useful in this game, as one single fish got me quite a lot from ban. The fishing itself plays sort of like Animal Crossing, just about the shadows. Hey, I told you it gets emulated a lot. Just put your rod into the river or pond and wait for these nibbles, which are shown in vibrations. Weirdly, your controller won't vibrate though. Eventually, the fish will pull the hook, and when it does, just tap A and you have yourself a catch. It's very simple, but once again, very relaxing and a nice distraction from the hard labours of work on the farm. Fallout 4 is a fishing rod, but you can't fish. Whereas Skyrim lets you catch fish, but doesn't have a fishing rod, or any tools for that matter. Bethesda, why are you like this? So yeah, in Skyrim, to catch fish, you just swim up to them and press catch. You can also use your bow and arrow, but it's not ideal. It really doesn't work. At least Skyrim lets you cook fish. Well, you can cook salmon. The rest you can use in alchemy. So yeah, it's not very in-depth. But on the flip side, was anybody expecting The Sims 4 to be so in-depth with its fishing? I sure wasn't. There is actually a lifetime aspiration on The Sims 4 dedicated to fishing called the Angler, and a whole skill of 10 levels. However, fishing can only be done at certain areas in the game. By clicking signposts near the water, you can fish at that area. Kind of weird, there's this whole pond, but I can only fish in 3 separate areas. You can inspect the waters and select your bait before you go fishing in that spot, and you can even use smaller fish that you've caught as bait for larger fish. By progressing the fishing skill, not only can you help your sim achieve their life goals, which means you can get perks for your sims to make life easier, but you can also sell or eat fish, which can be pretty useful. Once you're experienced enough, you can discuss fishing or mentor other sims in the skill. You can even display the fish you catch on the walls or in fish tanks. Now here's a controversial statement. Fishing in Sims 4 isn't technically fun. Hear me out. Anyone who has played The Sims 4 knows that the real fun comes from managing your Sims' needs, wants, time and income. Kinda like real life, but much easier. Fishing plays like every other skill in The Sims 4, where you passively watch rather than actively control. On top of that, it seems almost completely random what you'll catch, and besides a bait switch to increase your chances for a certain fish, it doesn't feel like you have much control over that aspect. That's not to say Sims 4 isn't fun. It is an incredibly fun game, but a fishing simulator, it is not. If you want a Sims game where you have a bit more control over fishing, then look no further than The Sims Castaway. A Sims game where you are controlling, not commanding the Sims. In The Sims Castaways to fish, all you have to do is craft a fishing spear and then make your way over to a school of fish. Wait till you see one jump in the air, press the action button, there you go, you've caught a fish. Again, it still seems quite random, and whilst you can upgrade your tools to increase the chance of rarer fish, it really does not feel more interactive. Weirdly, even though you have more control, I would say that The Sims 4 is far superior if you're looking for a fishing experience in a Sims game. Of course, Far Cry 5, because nothing makes more sense than going for a nice long fishing trip whilst taking down a bunch of crazy cult members. In Far Cry 5, you can actually find a fishing rod located at random spots in the game, or you can just go to the game store and buy them. Far Cry 5 is another game that lets you fish wherever there is water, but the game will give you hints on the best place to go if you want to catch a certain type of species. Far Cry 5 with its ambience, graphics and settings actually makes it quite a good fishing simulation without the full-on realism. So once you have your ideal spot, just equip that rod and fish away. The longer you hold the trigger, the further the line will go. When you get a bite, the aim of the game is to fight the fish and tire them out, giving you a window of opportunity to reel them in. To fight the fish, simply use your thumbstick to pull the rod in the opposite direction that the fish is swimming. Just make sure you aren't reeling whilst the fish is swimming, or your line will start to turn from green to red, indicating it's about to snap. This kind of mechanic is used in quite a few first-person games that allow fishing, as you will see, and whilst I don't think Far Cry was the first to use this, they sure did utilise it well. And once fish are caught, they can be sold for profit, and if it's your first time catching that species, you'll also gain a perk point. Now, fishing is really fun in this game, but as money's not hard to come by, it's not really something you need to do, and because of that, it kind of gets forgotten most of the time. Minecraft is an ever-changing and evolving game that, despite all the changes it's gone through throughout the years, hasn't changed its fishing very much. Of course, the game that lets you do whatever you want is going to let you fish. And once you've crafted a rod, you are free to fish in any waters that you like, regardless of how deep it is or where it is. When fishing, you'll see these small splashes coming towards your bobber, and when it gets to the rod, you can pull in fish. It is quite simple, but honestly, it's actually not as fun or relaxing as it may seem. I'm not sure what it is, but I have a feeling it may be because there's no struggling animation now. Just that extra addition of a struggle animation really makes it feel worth it. In addition to that, it is also really easy and there isn't really much to fishing in this game. You can do it in a boat, and you can even enchant your rods to give you an extra perk for fishing, but really if you want to fish these days, it's actually easier to swim up to them and kill them with your sword. Once you've caught a fish, you can cook and eat them to replenish your hunger, or give them to cats to tame them. However, I don't recommend eating the puffer fish, that one's used for brewing potions instead. Now, I'm not saying that fishing isn't useful in Minecraft, it's just that the actual act of fishing is really kind of shallow when it can be done anywhere, anytime with basically no effort or skill. Now, a game like Sea of Thieves that lets you play as a pirate sailing the vast ocean must have fishing in it, right? Well, luckily it does, and I didn't even notice when I started making this video as it wasn't part of the game on launch. But what a great addition it is though. Honestly, when I was first playing this, I was stumped. It can be quite hard to get the hang of at first, but once you get there, it can be a nice, tough, yet relaxing challenge, with good rewards. Luckily, you can fish anywhere, which is good because this game is like 90% water. To fish, you simply pull out your rod, choose your bait, cast your line, and wait for a bite. Once a fish hooks, it's gonna pull your line at great speeds. I mean, I don't know where it's trying to go, but it's definitely trying. Now, the key here is to fight against the fish using the analog stick and wait for it to tire, much like Far Cry 5. Once a line goes slack, you're free to reel it in as much as you can until the fish starts pulling again. And just like before, don't reel when the fish is pulling or you will break your line. Now, the only drawback to this type of fishing is you cannot let your fish touch anything, and I mean a rock in the ocean, anything. If your fish touches anything that is not water, you instantly fail. It's maybe the only downside to this, as the fish will always pull to something that it shouldn't and there's not much you can do to really stop it. These fish can then be cooked and eaten to replenish health, or you can just eat it raw if you don't mind salmonella, or you can take them to a place called the Hunter's Call and sell them for both gold and experience. Of course, as you probably guessed, there's quite a large variety of fish you can catch and quite a few variants of these fish as well, all worth different amounts of money. So depending on when and where you fish, along with the bait you use, will affect what you can catch. It does get way more in depth than this from what I've seen, but basically this is an all-round great game for fishing. Now, it was only a matter of time before Rockstar took a crack at fishing, and boy did these guys go all out for Red Dead Redemption 2. There are quite a few missions in this game that are based around fishing, although there are only 2 in the actual story and the fishing segment of 1 is entirely optional. Regardless, there's plenty of missions outside the main story that revolve around it, including having you catch 13 legendary fish. The rod is kept in your satchel so it can be easily used at any location, and this equipped animation. I don't know what it is, but I just love it. The gameplay is actually a little different from what we've already seen, and luckily for us, the fishing gameplay doesn't vary much from single player to online. Like the other games, when you feel a bite and latch on, you fight against it for a bit, just like before, and wait for it to get tired. Where it differs is you now use the analog stick instead to simulate reeling, so the faster you can reel on your thumbs, the faster you'll reel in game. So in either game mode, you can select your bait you can buy from any general goods store or find out in the wild. Now if you want to catch bigger stuff, you'll need to use lake lures, otherwise you're stuck with the smaller fish. Fish can then be sold to a butcher for profit, especially online, or you can cook and eat them to replenish all your character's needs like hunger. You can also use a boat, which that skippable story mission we mentioned earlier has you do. And as it is of all other open world games, depending on where you fish will affect what type of fish you're going to catch. The Red Dead does make it a nice challenge, so fishing will often take up a good amount of your time. What won't take up a good amount of your time is Mario Odyssey. I bet anyone that's played Mario Odyssey completely forgot fishing was even in it. It's true though, if you go to various kingdoms and find Lakitu, you can possess him and play a short fishing minigame. You can get coins, a heart upgrade, and of course the game's main collectible, a moon. You can even fish out other things like Captain Toad or, is that Poochie? It plays a little like Animal Crossing except you can move on top of the water. Or slime, or sand. Wait, where are you going? You basically lower your hook in front of these small silhouette fish and pull up once they grab. The big fish will take a bit of button mashing to get out. The only problem is once you've caught a moon, there's no reason for you to carry on fishing. So whilst it can be a nice distraction, it's a very short minigame. Jak and Daxter is another platformer to sneak fishing into it. And this minigame is notoriously hard. So this one uses a net rather than a fishing rod, and the idea is to catch 200 pounds of fish for this guy. Small fish are worth £1, big fish are worth 5. However, you can't miss more than 20 pounds of fish, and you can't catch a single purple eel, as that will, quote, spoil the catch. So yeah, as you can probably tell already, it's a challenge. This part is actually required to progress through the game though, as completing it will not only give you a power cell, the game's main collectible, but will also unlock a new area for you to explore. So you can see just by looking at the footage how hard it is, however it's still a fun mode that requires some fast reflexes, and for whatever reason, you're gonna love it. Luckily though, you only have to do this brutal challenge once, and once you're done, the pirate that gave you the mission is just gonna laugh indefinitely, which is just amazing. We Play is a minigame compilation game that pretty much uses motion controls for all of its games, and of course, one of those games is fishing. Now, combining motion controls and fishing can make for a very delightful experience, especially when it's combined with a very simple and calm art style. Now, it controls exactly as you would expect a Wii fishing game to control. The motion controls is controlling a hand that's holding a rod, which you can move around the fishing pond. And when a fish latches on, you pull up and it catches them. The idea here is to rack up as many points as you can before the time runs out, with each fish worth different amount of points. The bigger the fish, the more times they'll tap the hook before latching. There's also a bonus fish displayed at the top which is worth double points and will change constantly. The better the score you get, the better the ranking will be, and you can even earn yourself medals from bronze, silver, gold and platinum. Honestly, this minigame is one of my personal favourites on Wii Play, which is why I managed to get platinum whilst recording, because it's just that fun. Of course, we couldn't talk about fishing in a video game without talking about Ocarina of Time. For whatever reason, you mention fishing in a video game, and this is the game most people think of. The only reason I can think of why that is because this game does it really well. I think part of the reason why it's so fun is because the game adds extra emphasis on the fishing. When a fish hooks, the game will play the same music as when you're versing an enemy, so you really know you're in for a battle. It's kind of crazy how fun it is when you realise there's only one area you can fish in. In Lake Hylia, there is a fishing hole where for the low price of 20 rupees you can fish to your heart's content. You can even come back 7 years later and do it all over again. There are only two kinds of fish you can catch here, so it's all about the size with regular fish. Catch yourself a big enough fish will either earn you a piece of heart or a golden scale depending on your age. Whilst these are a nice reward, the whole thing is completely optional, and what's more optional is catching a Hylian loach. Once you have yourself big enough fish, you can find yourself a lure called the sinking lure, and you can go for the Hylian loach. Now this is more of a bragging rights kind of thing, as the game won't even keep track of you doing this. You do get 50 rupees though. Twilight Princess then took all the concepts of Ocarina of Time and completely evolved them. Right out of the gate, the fishing rod is now an item in your inventory and you can fish wherever you want. And I mean wherever. Rivers, lakes, you can even fish inside temples and catch actual bad guys. Look at this is forbidden, but I can still do it. Fishing with the rod does now play a little differently from before. You now have a marker on your fishing rod that will show you when to pull in. There is a lot less of a battle than before, but the game does announce when you catch a fish, so that's quite nice. You also have a compendium like Animal Crossing that will keep track of the size of the fish you catch along with which ones you have already caught. Twilight Princess even adds extra emphasis on fishing by making it a requirement to progress through certain parts of the story, including one of the very first things you do in game. But fear not, you Ocarina of Time fans, as the fishing hole makes a triumphant return. And much like everything else in this game, it's been upgraded to be much bigger and way more beautiful. And every time you enter the fishing hole, the seasons will change to help accommodate for the larger variety of fish you can now catch. It plays very much like it did in Ocarina of Time, but you're now in a boat. You can also now change your lures, which can attract different fish and will work differently to one another while still keeping the same core gameplay. You can even unlock more lures by playing the worst minigame ever. No, seriously, whoever made this is just evil. Overall, the fishing gameplay in Twilight Princess is a dramatic upgrade from Ocarina of Time. And then Breath of the Wild went the Skyrim route. Okay, to be fair to Breath of the Wild, it's not exactly like Skyrim. Whilst you can catch fish by swimming up to them or using arrows, admittedly a lot more effectively than Skyrim, you can now also use bombs or summon them using amiibo. Although I'm pretty sure fish falling from the sky doesn't count as fishing. Much like Twilight Princess, you can now fish from any body of water, and if you're lucky enough to be searching on a rainy day, the fish will actually be attracted to the surface. Or you can use food to bait them. Admittedly though, the fishing itself is nowhere near as in-depth as its predecessors. However, it's what you do with the fish afterwards that really makes the difference. So, once caught, fish can be sold for a profit or used in armor upgrades. Fish can also be cooked, which is their main function in the game. The variety of fish all now come with different perks attached to them, and it's pretty easy to guess which perk based on their name. For example, I have a few Staminoka fish here, and when they are cooked they'll give me a meal with stamina enhancing effects. This is the same for any fish that you catch and your choice of ingredients to cook with them. So, whilst the fishing may not be as good as the other Zeldas mentioned, the game more than makes up for it by its sheer amount of use for fish. And that is fishing in video games. As you can see, fishing can be a really fun activity in games, and when done right, it can really add depth and variety to even the most unlikely genres. Like I said at the very beginning, I barely scratched the surface and there are plenty of games that I've missed. So leave a comment down below telling me what games you love that have fishing in them and why you enjoy them. You can go really in depth if you want to, I don't mind, I'll read it. And if you don't comment, that's fine too. Either way, thank you for watching, I really do appreciate it, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.